hospital online marketing, and today I'm talking with Chris Bevolo about the effect of the internet on hospital branding. Now, some of you may know Chris Bevolo. He's the president and founder of Interval and a frequent keynote speaker and presenter at national healthcare conferences on the topics of marketing, branding, innovation, and consumer trends. He also wrote a really great book called The Marketer's Guide to Brand Strategy. His firm, Interval, is a nationally recognized thought leader in the healthcare marketing and branding. And lastly, he runs a really great weekly podcast called Healthcare Marketing Insights. So, hey, Chris, how are you today?
Good, Chris. Thanks.
You know, hospitals that I work with often struggle with the concept of branding. And since you're a thought leader in this industry, I wanted to ask you, how do you define branding?
Well, branding is such a misunderstood concept. I think you're right. And so many people equate branding. Typically, it's equated with the logo or the corporate identity. A lot of times it's equated with what you might call the communication side of things. So branding something as your advertising or your messaging and that type of thing. In essence, what we say, and I've got this in the book, so I'm just going to quote that, a brand is the value, the emotion, and the reputation a consumer gives any organization, product, or service. So when you hear that, the first thing you think of is the brand isn't yours, it's your audience's. They own the brand. They own that emotion. They own that value. Branding is your attempt to try to shape that. And you want to try to shape it in a way that is mindful, that is strategic, that is the way you want it to be shaped. And you do that not just through advertising, certainly not just through your logo, but really the primary way you drive brand value is the experience you deliver.
One of the items you pointed out in your book is that the brand is kind of pervasive throughout the hospital and really is essential to have an executive visionaries, so to speak, that kind of drives your brand strategy. So tell me, from your perspective, obviously you believe branding strategy is very imperative, but tell me about some of the challenges that you see hospitals are having with it right now.
Part of this is you kind of have to take a few steps back and look at the industry as a whole. And there are a lot of folks that kind of see hospitals and health systems when it comes to marketing and branding as being maybe 10 to 20 years behind other industries. And that's not because we're stupid. It's not because we don't care. It's because really we didn't have to compete as an industry until really the 80s. And if you want to use another industry to look at, think of banking. So until deregulation came along, bankers really didn't compete. They opened their doors, people put their money in. That's where bankers' hours came from, right? I mean, they'd open at 9 and closed at 3 because they didn't care. They didn't have to compete for your money. Deregulation came along, and all of a sudden, you had all these different investment options, places to put your money, and banks had to figure out, hey, we actually have to compete, and that means building stronger brands. So one of the biggest challenges is a lot of the folks that lead our organizations came up in through the ranks during a time when branding didn't even matter. There might not have been marketing departments in their organizations.
Right.
So if you don't have a leadership that values and understands brands, it's almost impossible to develop a true brand strategy and activate that. So that's probably the number one issue that we face as organizations.
There's numerous changes that are going on even these last couple of years in hospitals and what they're facing with their branding and their marketing and their kind of image. And one of the biggest issues that's you know that I care about is the internet. The internet's had a tremendous impact on healthcare branding strategies. Tell me a little bit about what your opinion is on some of the most significant changes that the internet's facing, or internet's applying towards hospital branding.
The internet is one of 3 market trends or forces that we see really accelerating the need for hospitals to take branding seriously. The first is increasing number of choices for consumers when it comes to care. Healthcare used to be local. Now walls are crumbling, medical tourism's growing. You've got new entrants into the field. You've got mini clinics that have come on board. Walgreens has just announced that they're going to start offering diabetes consults from their pharmacists. So you've got all these different competition entrants. The second thing that's changing, obviously, is consumer-driven healthcare. So we have more skin in the game. And I always like to use myself as an example. I have 3 kids. We have a $6,000 deductible on our kids. So before any insurance kicks in, we've got to spend $6,000 of our own money. You can imagine how that changes our approach, how we start to question what care is needed, how it's delivered. So that brings us to the third thing, the thing you mentioned, the internet. The internet empowers us all to find those choices. and to put our consumer-driven dollars to work.
Right.
And so the internet, in a nutshell, has empowered us in that way. It's provided us the ability to do research on our own when it comes to medical treatments and medical diagnoses, and also to research our choices. And so I think that's the most powerful thing it's done. Those three forces combined, we really think makes it imperative for hospitals to build strong brands, because if your brand is not strong, doesn't stand out, isn't differentiated, it's going to be hard for you to survive given those forces.
Right. And, social media really I always say social media democratizes the way content is online, and it gives the consumers, us, the patients, a bigger choice about how we actually define hospital brands or company brands. So tell me a little bit about social media. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of hospitals are doing it because they have to do it. Everyone else is out there doing it, but back in the back of their heads, they're thinking, social media is really losing your branding control. So
Right.
how do you feel, about this, the whole thing about the blogs, the Facebook, Twitters? How do healthcare providers really need to shift the way they brand themselves out there?
It's whether you want to face the world with fear or you want to face the world looking for opportunity. And social media is that in a nutshell. It's not 1955 anymore. You can't expect to control your brand messaging, your communications, how you influence the consumer's value of your brand through one of 4 network, TV channels, 1 to 1 million communication. It's gone. That is gone. That doesn't mean that those tools, by the way, don't have impact. I still think they do. But now people are talking amongst themselves. They are debating your brand amongst themselves. And you can look at that and go, oh, we don't have control anymore. Or you can look at it and go, wow, now we have even greater opportunity to engage our audiences. And I think the best example of this is Apple. And people always talk about Apple for all kinds of reasons. And sometimes you get into a little trouble because you throw out Apple as an example and there's nobody else that really lives up to it, right?
Right.
But when you think about if you're not an Apple fan, you've never gone there, on their own website, they host a support forum. Which is the number one place people go to, I think, when they have trouble or want to know more about their Apple products. There are thousands of posts on there every day, right? They have basically opened themselves up and said, we want our customers to engage, and we're going to provide you a way to do that right here. And it's organized, it's centralized, everybody goes to that place. That, to me, is an example of looking at that as an opportunity, and that openness, I think, has really benefited Apple.